So there's a show over this side of the pond called The Great British Bake Off. Now, I'm not sure if that has ventured other places. I imagine it probably has. Or, right, yeah, what I mean, the rights have gone. So there's, a German version, a French version, a US version, you know. But yeah, it's this baking show. The contestants each week, you bake and then someone falls off. Now, they cook different, things from around the world. Like I used to watch it. Well, I think I watched a season back in the day. I just get bored of things like that. It's the same old formula, right? It's just like, ugh. And they think they're funny, right? The hosts always think that they're terrible jokes, and you're just like, what are we doing? But there's been a lot of scandal with Great British Bake Off recently, you know? Things happening like judges insulting people, harassment, all these different things. And there's something else, right? So supposedly they started to do these national weeks. So where they would cook traditional things from a certain country, you know, and yeah, it has backfired on them. It definitely has backfired. So supposedly it started in 2020 and they did a Japan week. Then in 2021, they did a German week. And last year, they did a Mexico week. And I think the Mexico one is where it really was the last straw. But supposedly, instead of just going, hey, we'll cook dishes from Mexico, they wore sombreros, had maracas, and put on horrible accents. And people are just like, yo, you're taking a piss, son. What are we doing? What are we doing? Which, yeah, it is that thing, right? Because there's certain things that people do, and they're like, that's racist. You can't do that. But there's other things, and they're just like, oh, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, if everyone pretended to be French, like wore berets, had onions around their neck, I think a lot of times they let that slide. Right? You can take the piss out of redheads. No one says a thing. It's very weird. It's very weird the lines that we draw with this stuff. When you just be like, all right, we don't have to be dicks about this stuff. And another complaint was that the dishes they were cooking weren't necessarily Mexican, right? Weren't necessarily Mexican. And so, because all of this, Channel 4, who now do Bake Off, have said that they are they're not going to do the National Week anymore. Now, it is one of those things, right, where I'm like, they don't apologize. They do off-key, like these off-key things happen, and they never be like, you know what? We tried to be clever. We tried to be funny. And yeah, we fucked up. They never do that. They never do that, which is always, it's a typical thing, right? It's a typical thing. And it's irritating. So one of the judges, Paul Hollywood, who is a dick, supposedly he's like, oh, he had just been to Mexico, right? So it's just like he was gutted, right? He said, I'd literally come back from Mexico about 3 weeks before we filmed the episode, he said. I was all over the place and we set the challenges based on what I'd seen there. The challenges were very good and everyone did a good job. So, you know what I mean? You're like, at no point are you saying, oh, yeah, we shouldn't have had the maracas or tried to put on stupid accents. Like, we shouldn't have done. And just because you went there doesn't mean they were authentic dishes. Like, you can go anywhere in the fucking London and eat things from all over the world, right? Doesn't mean like, so is that authentic? Like, what are we saying with that statement? It's kind of dumb. One of the other judges, Drew, Prue Leaf, I think it is Prue Leaf, said the thing about Bake Off is that it absolutely represents inclusivity and diversity and tolerance and togetherness. So the idea that we were set out to insult anybody is ridiculous. Again, no, you're not addressing the things that have been said, right? You wore sombreros, you had maracas, you put on terrible accents. Like, no one is addressing that. They're just saying words. They're saying words. And the thing being, right? You can still do a national themed week, cook things from around the world. Just don't be asses about it. And why don't you, right? Here's an idea, motherfuckers. Why don't you bring in a top chef from that country? Bring in a top chef from that country, right? And say, hey, you set the challenges. Then you know you're getting authentic dishes, right? And you're representing the country properly. Do that. That's what you need to do. But instead, they're just like, oh, we're just not going to do it anymore. Right? Which is pathetic. Right? Back in the day, Channel 4, when that channel first launched, was that launched in you know, in my lifetime, man. Like, there's a point where we only had 3 channels, right? And then Channel 4 came. But it was really like they actually did diverse things. They actually were looking to make good programming. Now it's just become a bit trash, right? It's shitty programs, right? Where they're, naked attraction, you know, like there's a show where people go to a place to participate in orgies and stuff. I don't know what it's called. It's just they just make trash now, right? So this response for Bake Off just it feels typical. It doesn't feel surprising. You know what I mean? And it just shows, man, they're full of shit. Full of shit. There's no apology there. There's no apology or like, yeah, we shouldn't have done that thing. It's just like, no, what we did was fine. Or blah, blah, blah. Dumbasses, right? That's why when people claim to be allies and all of this other thing, it's bullshit. I don't believe you, right? I judge you on what you do, not what you say. And what Channel 4 and Bake Off are saying is codswallop.